This is Reign of Christ Sunday. And technically in the church, the Christian liturgical calendar, this is the last Sunday of the year. And it is the day that we herald Jesus as the sovereign all over the land. You may have heard me tell you that when I was about 4 or 5 years old, I was a part of what in my church they call the Sunshine Band. And what that was a group of children who sang horribly but so excitedly. And one song I remember, and it's actually, I think, one of my favorite songs. We would come in singing as loudly as we can, not even knowing what a key was, singing, "Get all excited and tell everybody that Jesus Christ is King." And little did we know that our church and the elders of our church were letting us know that whatever was going on in the world, that our sovereign, our ruler, was Jesus Christ. On this Reign of Christ Sunday, as we absorb and explore the implications of our recent presidential campaign season, and watch a new administration prepare to take control of the executive branch of government, I do not think it an exaggeration to conclude that we are undergoing a crisis of leadership in our society. And that's not a partisan statement, that's a statement of reality. Because public opinion and recent voting behaviors and patterns reveal a people and electorate that is disaffected and disconnected from the leaders that they have entrusted to manage our political, economic, religious, and media institutions. With their votes and their opinions, the people continue over and over again to lodge a complaint against the leaders and institutions in our society. And we religious folk like to think that this problem of disaffection and disconnection is wholly a function of mismanagement of government. But I want to suggest that poor religious leadership is equally to blame for feelings of exile that so many people are expressing. Yes, I'm indicting myself in that. We have failed. We have failed. And so we are continuing to confront an all-encompassing failure of leadership in our culture. Everywhere you look, we are failing to serve people. And this all-encompassing failure of leadership provides a unique opportunity, though, for God to effect a new reality, for us to embrace and embody a new thing, the alternative way of ordering life that God will make possible. We are called to serve a disillusioned, disaffected, disconnected people and imagine together how God's justice and righteousness can be practiced in our midst. And I say all of that to just set us up because Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah, in our text today, gives voice to the kind of leadership that God desires for the people. And Jeremiah does not shrink from pronouncing woe. Now, when you see woe to you, that's your tip-off that God is about to kick you in the backside. When you hear woe, you better stop in your tracks because you are going down the wrong path. And so Jeremiah comes forth and pronounces woe against the failed leadership. And he is clear that the people have fallen away. The people have lost all that they believe in and know because the leaders have failed to care for them, to tend to their needs, to address the issues and challenges that they are experiencing with their religious, political, and economic institutions. You see, when God anointed kings over Israel, God did so with the command and expectation that these leaders would look out for the welfare of the people. Think of that. I'm letting you lead my people. Is it strange to you that I ask for you to look out for the welfare of the people? And so God was very clear with King, and in this case, the particular King Zedekiah, who got so wrapped up in the international intrigue of Babylon that he failed to lead God's people. And so the leaders stand accused of scattering God's beloved, of driving them away, of leading them down a wrong path. Because of these leaders' refusal to take seriously the well-being of the people now turn away from God in fear, in anger, and desperation. Does that sound familiar? Fear and anger and desperation because you don't feel safe. Fear, anger, and desperation because leaders are not calling you to imagine. That's what they felt. So kings and priests and prophets all have not executed justice and righteousness. They have acted contrary to the character of God. But here's the beautiful thing in this text today, because Jeremiah then prophesies hope. If the leaders won't lead, and if the institutions they control won't take care of the people, then God will lead. Oh, I want to say that again. If the leaders won't take care of the people, if the institutions they control won't look out for human need, then God will lead. God will act to make things right on a cosmic level and a human level. Oh, what you talking about, Pastor? We're covering all bases. We're covering all the bases. The reason we're covering all bases is because God is going to make things right, and then God pivots and says, then I'm going to send somebody. I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to send somebody to do it. God's got you covered which way you go. God's got you covered. Jeremiah declares that in the absence of a just and caring human leadership, God will bring God's people out of exile by divine leadership, and then going to send somebody else to do it. God will restore those who have fallen away, those who have found themselves disconnected and disaffected. God will bring them all back and lead them with justice and righteousness. Now, so I kept bringing that point about cosmic and human level because I don't want you to think that we're talking about some otherworldly thing going. I don't want you to think, I don't want anybody to get away and say, oh, we'll get good leadership when we die and go to heaven. No. God said you're going to get good leadership now. Oh, come on. You got to go with me here. You got to go. If you're looking at the news and it is starting to make you upset, don't get upset. Just know that God's going to lead if that leader can't lead. And here's the thing. You don't have to wait because God knows. God told Moses, I see, I hear, and I know, and I'm going to do something about it. So we don't have to wait to heaven. We can now say, oh, what's going to happen? We know that God is going to lead us. So the kind of leadership that God is talking about is going to happen right now in this world. God promises to send a good shepherd who will execute justice and righteousness for God's people. Very idea of leadership that Jeremiah was talking about. Jesus understood in his day that there was a crisis of leadership, that the people were being ignored and neglected. As a matter of fact, the people were being oppressed. And Jesus comes down and said, I have good news to proclaim. I'm proclaiming good news of God. And here's the good news, that the reign of God is here right now. That we are a beloved community of God. That you don't have to worry about your status or your background. You don't have to worry about being well born. You don't have to worry about being rich. You don't have to worry about having the right kind of ideas or faces. You don't have to worry about being in the right place. You don't have to worry about being honorable or even shameful. Whoever you are, God's reign is for all God's children, and you are a part of it. So we know what that leadership looks like. That leadership that God was talking about was embodied in Jesus Christ, who said that everybody is included in the reign of God. It doesn't matter. Jesus went out and started to confront all those failed leaders in the political realm, in the economic realm, in the religious realm, and said, woe against you. You are a faker. God is the true shepherd. You've been leading God's people astray. Jesus becomes the very embodiment of the kind of leader that Jeremiah prophesied by. And so this is the Jesus behind you, whose leadership inspires so many who find themselves on the losing end of society's order and system. Poor people, oppressed people, marginalized people. So the Gospels, all of the Gospels report that crowds of people gathered around him, finding in his leadership the justice and righteousness that God says was theirs to have. They reported it. Everywhere Jesus, when he couldn't get away, crowds that came in on what was going on. What was going on? I'll tell you what's going on. They had found their leader. The true leader. The true leader. And so, that's the Jesus. That's the Jesus. The Jesus that my parents and that church that I grew up in gave me. They introduced me to that Jesus. That's why, as loud as I could, I would say, get all excited and tell everybody that Jesus Christ is King. Oh, I didn't even know what I was singing, but I sang it loud because I knew we had found our leader. But as I got older, I became disaffected and disillusioned. Where is the leader? Our human leadership is failing us. Where is the leader that is going to bring us together? I looked at the news, and I looked at the institutions, and those leaders weren't there. And I asked my parents, how? How have you done it all these years? How did you do it? How did you keep going when all the levers of power were arrayed against you? How did they move forward with the sure knowledge that their bodies were always suspected and targeted for violence? They always answered me, we have Jesus. Jesus was their leader. Oh, I thought they were silly. I thought my parents were deluded. I thought they didn't know what they were. I dismissed them as misguided church people waiting on the rapture and the end times to get the justice that they deserved. But I learned that they were not following Jesus solely for some heavenly reward. I learned later on that they were following Jesus because Jesus was the one leader who saw them for the beloved that they were. They had Jesus. Jesus was their leader when none of their other leaders would look upon them with eyes of love and acceptance and equality. They had Jesus. I discovered why they did that. They knew that if their leaders weren't going to be leaders of justice and righteousness, they had one leader. Jesus would always include them, always provide justice, always make it right for them. That's the Jesus that they follow. So when the leadership failed them, oh, they weren't afraid. The one leader, the one sovereign, the ruler who would always welcome and gather them. Oh, that's when I began to discover when I met Jesus myself, that because Jesus is a good shepherd, then I know that God is on our side when human leaders fail us. Because Jesus is a righteous shepherd. We matter. And our lives are worth saving and living abundantly. Because Jesus is our shepherd, we will not allow those who will reject or oppress us to scatter us or send us away or lead us away from God. Because Jesus is our shepherd, we accept God's story and God's word that we are loved by and beloved of God. And we deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. Because Jesus is our shepherd, we can risk our very lives to free others from oppression. We can marry who we love. We can confront discrimination in all its forms. Jesus, the true King, the true leader, Oh, in our own time, it is true. It is true. We face a reality that our own political and economic leaders and institutions will not always and most often will not execute justice and righteousness in this land. That's the reality. We know that our political leaders are very apt to ignore the very real needs of the people for the sake of the powerful and the privileged. We know that our institutions sometimes act to perpetuate themselves. It has to make money. We know that. And when human leaders fail, we have in Jesus an example of the kind of servant leadership that served God's people. We have access to justice and righteousness that affirms us as God's own flock and lifts us up to confront the powers and systems that dominate and oppress us. Oh, I know we are indeed in a political crisis. There have been many people wondering what is going on, what's going to happen, where are the leaders going to take us? Well, it doesn't matter who takes the reins of leadership over our institutions, because we can assume the prophetic mantle to pronounce woe on those who fail to lead with justice and righteousness. We're going to bear witness with our very lives about what good leadership looks like. Good leadership. Leadership that takes seriously God's people, their dignity, their worth. We do it. And we're going to ask and we're going to tell, we're going to let the world know that we demand justice and righteousness. You don't have your leadership position because it's your birthright. You have it because we, the people, willed it so. And God is on our side. God is on our side. So when any leader begins to think that they have it by their birthright, we just remind them on a cosmic and human level, Jesus, God and Jesus, working it out, will come and gather us back. That will bring us together as a people. That will set beloved community before us. That will pronounce and proclaim the reign of God, where all God's children have a home. That's going to happen when Jesus takes the throne. Amen.